Hi, this is the Kodak Vollenda 48, a folding camera that shoots 3x4 centimeter images on the older 127 film. It was originally made by Nagel-Werk and later by Kodak AG in Stuttgart, Germany, between the years of 1929 and 37. The model we're looking at now is the German version of the camera. The Vollenda was one of Dr. August Nagel's models that he designed at his own company and brought over to Kodak when he merged with them in 1931. Like all Nagel designed cameras, the Vollenda was a very high quality and compact camera that had an excellent lens and a very capable shutter. So this camera I've purchased through eBay and imported from the USA to the UK. First camera that I've imported via the USA. I've imported loads before from Japan and other countries in Europe, but this is the first from the US. Overall, it was a great experience, and the camera is as described. Just to go over a little bit more detail on the actual camera, it is, as I said, a Schneider lens with the maximum aperture of f3.5, it's 5 centimeter lens. It's got an uncoated glass with 3 elements. It's a very simple viewfinder flip-up mechanism, and I'll explain a bit more as we go through the video. As I'm unwrapping this package, which is extremely well packaged, by the way, let's have a little bit of history about August Nagel. And he was born, we believe, in 1882 in Stuttgart, Germany. He worked in various small machine factories, learning all about mechanics and engineering. And in around 1908, at about 26, he founded his first company with his friend Carl Drechsel, called Drechsel and Nagel of Stuttgart. They produced their first compact camera called the Contessa No. 1, which was 4.5 by 7 centimeter images, and we believe took early roll film. They saw a lot of success in the early years because their cameras were extremely well made and continue to be well made all through the period that they were manufacturing. In the early 1920s, Nagel merged and created a new company, which was to form the Zeiss Ikon AG in Germany. And after a couple of years with them, had a bit of a changing of direction and decided to start up again in his own way with his own cameras. And he started to create a new series of cameras. And some of Nagel's designs during this period were the Vollenda, the Pupil, the Liberette, and the Recamar. In the early 1930s, the German press had a lot of good things to say about his very high quality cameras. By the early 30s, Nagel-Werk had restored the reputation as being a world-class camera maker with over 20 years of experience making very high quality and well-performing cameras, and was respected all over the world. Around this time, Kodak was looking to improve their reputation in the camera industry by offering a lineup of German-designed cameras bearing the Kodak name. In 1931, representatives from Kodak offered to merge with Nagel-Werk, giving them the capital and support of one of the largest photographic companies in the world, with the understanding that Nagel would remain as managing director for the new Kodak-Nagel AG collaboration. So after working with Kodak and producing some new models with Kodak, the older models, including the Vollenda, were still around, and the earlier models would remain on sale until the late 1930s, including the Vollenda, the one we're looking at here. And they were relatively unchanged, but they did have a subtle change of branding. So instead of just Nagel cameras inscribed on the mechanism to close the lens, it would say Kodak Nagel, and hence you can see that on this camera. So for the models like the Vollenda being reviewed here, the collector's value of an original non-Kodak Nagel branded version is always higher. But despite any variance in the price for a collector, the quality of the camera was the same. So you can be rest assured that it was a great camera, and still is a great camera if you can find a decent one. So after the Second World War, the cameras, although were still around, Kodak tended to focus more on the newer cameras that they were designing, like the Retina. And the Vollenda was then discontinued and never made again. But today, anything associated with Dr. August Nagel is in very high demand by collectors. The same sort of collectors that collect the Kodak Retinas, because they both have a very, very similar quality about them. The Vollenda uses 127 format film, which was a precursor to the current 35mm film. It was quite a good film standard and is still available today, and has come back with more people being interested in it, because generally it was a smaller frame format than the 35mm, and hence the cameras that took the 127 film format were generally smaller, as in this example of the Vollenda. You can see this camera fits neatly into the palm of a hand, but still retains the high quality of the Schneider lens and the compact bellows format. The lens appears to be in pretty good nick. Can't really see any obvious signs of fungus or anything. So we will set the shutter speed to 1/50th, and we will cock the shutter and release the shutter. Okay, not too bad. Let's try the 300ths of a second. Cock the shutter. Oh, the lens is a bit loose. And fire it. That seems pretty quick. Now let's go down to 1/5 of a second. Ah. Okay. 1 second. Yeah, okay. So slow speeds are not good. Faster, as you can see, it hasn't released all the way. The fast speeds are probably not that great either. So 50th is working. Let's try the 25th. 25th of a second is working. 10th of a second is not. It's not completely releasing. Sometimes with these old cameras, by working the shutter, you can free it up slightly, but this is definitely needing a service. The aperture's on f16. I'll widen that right up to f3.5, so reasonably stiff. I'll go back to 50th. Open up shutter. Okay. And let's try it on B for bulb, and open the shutter, close the shutter. So on these cameras, you don't cock the shutter when you have it on bulb or timed, you just use the actual shutter lever. So in this case, we will just, on bulb, we will just open the shutter and release it to close the shutter. So you have a cable release that goes in here, so you wouldn't normally hold it yourself. The time basically says when I press it once, it opens the shutter. When I press it again, it closes the shutter. And so you can see it's opened the shutter, but in this case, it doesn't really appear to have closed it. Interestingly, when I go back to bulb, it does. So there's obviously a service required on the shutter mechanism. That's okay. It's an old camera. Right, and if we open up the back with this little side latch here. So it takes 127 film, which is a bit rarer these days, not 120. And you can see the frame size here. If I open the lens up, there we go. So it's in actually quite good condition. There's no bits of corroded metal. The spool is in the side here. And this is where the other, obviously the other spool goes. So these bottom spool holders are sprung loaded to hold the spool in. And you just push it down and pull it out to take the spool out. So that all appears to be okay. Not too much dirt or gunge. I haven't checked the bellows, but hopefully they're okay. There's the winding mechanism, and this is a gauge to show to the back, to the front, and feet and distance. So it's basically telling you about depth of field when you have f16 all the way up to f3.5, the range and distance that you'll have in focus. So it's just a memory aid, really. It doesn't actually do anything to the camera. There is no film speed. It's very basic, but they do have an excellent lens and shutter. And this one, like most of them, needs a service unless you're quite happy to always shoot it from a 50th of a second upwards approximately, which is possible. With the right film in there, the right film speed, you could do that. I mean, 50ths of a second is a good average for, say, a 200 or perhaps a 400 ASA film. And obviously you can adjust the shutter. But I will give the shutter a service and the various lens groups a clean to get everything going. So we have a few slight bumps on this curve here. I think what they generally call Zeiss bumps is where the metal has corroded or reacted with the glue perhaps and the leather. But apart from a few bumps on the corners, which may be someone's attempt at re-gluing perhaps, generally it's not a bad camera. Now, what did I pay for this? Well, this has come from the States. I paid shipping about 30 UK pounds, $38, to ship from the United States, California, to Devon, down in southwest England, UK. So that's what I paid for shipping, which is okay, understandable. What did I pay for the camera? It was about 80 UK pounds, 90 something dollars. Is it expensive? Yes, not compared to the prices that you may pay for this camera in the UK or anywhere else, to be honest. It's a reasonable condition camera. It does need a service. And I'd say most cameras of this age would need a service. You'd be very naive to think you could buy a camera like this and not have it serviced or service it yourself. Apart from that, it looks to be pretty well intact. Was the description of the camera accurate? Well, let's have a look. It says Kodak Vollenda Schneider-Kreuznach Retina Kodak, made by Nagel-Werk, tested. f3.5 tested shutter. Obviously the shutter, if it was tested, is not working, and I'm sure was not working, and I have test fired the shutter at 300th to 100th works. So even though it says tested shutter, as you read down, as it says, it's only been tested between 300th and 1000th. Well, it's not 1000th, 100th. I mean, well, there is 100th, but it actually works down to a 50th. So, you know, potentially slightly better than described. There were lots of photos on the listing down here. I'm glad I got it, because it is I can't show you my grandfather's camera because it's all in pieces at the moment because I'm restoring it. But it is of a similar ilk to this, very basic. In fact, this is slightly more sophisticated. I think his camera was an earlier dated camera than this one. They are beautiful cameras. As you can see, it fits into the palm of my hand, so it fits into your pocket. Once it's serviced and running, and I've got the right film sorted out for it, it will be a great camera to have, and a nice showpiece, and very basic, which is great. Obviously you'd need to have a separate light meter, or you'd have to use the Sunny 16 rule, or guesstimate what the exposure is and use black and white film with a bit more latitude in the exposure, which I would do anyway because I developed my own black and white film. So summary, am I pleased with the camera? Yes, I wasn't really expecting anything more than basically what I got. I knew that the shutter was going to be suspect, even if they said it was going to be great, because it's the age of the camera. Is it a lovely camera? Has it got great patina? Yes. I wouldn't change anything about the leatherette. I wouldn't try and replace it or do anything like that. It's got a nice feel to it. There's no metal coming through, and everything works except for a good service on the shutter. So that's my summary of basically buying a camera from the States to the UK. It is pretty much as expected. It has been packed pretty much securely, and it did get here in a timely manner, which was 10 days, 2 weeks. So overall, I would say I'm very pleased.